Now the Apostle Paul makes a comment in his letter to the Colossians, chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, speaking of the Sabbath and the feast days as shadows to the body of Yeshua, the Messiah, in comparison as things to come or things being fulfilled. Now Paul was the most learned man in the Tanakh of the apostles, a Pharisee and the son of a Pharisee by his own admonition. So where do you think Paul would have gotten this revelation from? Well, if the revelation came from Father, and I believe it did, then it would have been substantiated in the Torah to both Paul and us today. And I submit to you that if Yeshua is the Aleph Tav, as John proclaimed him to be, then shouldn't his Aleph Tav mark appear in these places concerning the Sabbath and the feast days in the Torah as confirmation? Well, let's look at when the Sabbath was in Hebrew barak, or our English word blessed, after the 6 days of creation. And see, Genesis 2:1 states, "So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were finished. And on the seventh day Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made, and blessed Elohim Aleph Tav's day, the seventh, and sanctified him, because in him he rested from all his work which created Elohim and made." As a side note, the King James Version has translated the Hebrew word ato as it, but according to the interlinear scriptural analyzer, the proper translation should be him, as well as the Hebrew word bo, where the interlinear scriptural analyzer translates as in him. And that's another subject for another day. But we see the confirmation of what Paul was trying to say. And we also see confirmation of this out of Yeshua's mouth as well, in Matthew 12, verse 8, and Luke 6, verse 5, where Yeshua proclaims, "The Son of Man is Adonai of the Sabbath." Now, if you want the truth of a matter, you have to look at when the truth was created and established by Father. This is the law of first mentioned. And not only is the Sabbath the seventh day, that day can never be changed, or the commandment to rest on that day nullified by any man. Exodus 31:16 says, "Therefore you shall keep the children of Israel Aleph Tav's Sabbath, to observe Aleph Tav Sabbath throughout all their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days made Yahuwah Aleph Tav, the heavens, Aleph Tav, the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed." Again, we see confirmation that the Sabbath is Aleph Tav's Sabbath. And according to Exodus 31:16, the Sabbath was instituted as an everlasting covenant. And the word everlasting in Hebrew is olam. And it is the strongest word for describing eternity that there is in Hebrew. And it is used twice to describe Sabbath in these 2 verses. There you have the 2 witnesses, the Father and the Son, proclaiming Sabbath as the institution of Aleph Tav Sabbath. And I could show you many more. But let's push on and look at the feast days. Now, speaking of the first feast of Passover, we know that from the writings of both John and Peter that the lamb is used as a metaphor to describe Yeshua's blood and body at Calvary's stake. And if this is true, then there should be confirmation of this concerning the Passover lamb in association with the Aleph Tav in the Torah. Starting in Exodus 12, verse 8, "And they will eat Aleph Tav's flesh that night, roast it with fire, and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs." Verse 13, "And the blood will be Aleph Tav, a sign, upon the houses where you are. And when I see Aleph Tav's blood, I will pass over you, and the plague will not come upon you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." Verse 17, "And you will observe Aleph Tav's unleavened bread. For in this day I have brought Aleph Tav, your armies, out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you will observe Aleph Tav's day in all your generations by an ordinance forever. For Yahuwah will pass through to kill Aleph Tav, the Egyptians. And when he sees Aleph Tav's blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, Yahuwah will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to strike you. And you will observe Aleph Tav's matter as an ordinance for you and your sons forever. Here we see the proof that when the feast of Passover was instituted by Father in Egypt, we see the divine placement of the Aleph Tav, representing Yeshua's presence, and also a shadow picture of what Paul was proclaiming in Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. Let me point something out to you. In Exodus 12, verse 13, that we just read, the word translated as a sign, which is Lamed Aleph Tav. The Hebrew letter Lamed means authority. And strangely enough, this is the only place this word is used in the entire Old Testament Tanakh. And I believe what Moses is actually saying is that the Aleph Tav blood is actually the authority of the Aleph Tav, whereby the firstborn will be saved. The whole feast of Passover, which started in Egypt, can only be a prophetic shadow picture of the Lamb that would be slain, that was preordained from the foundation of the earth as Yeshua's blood that would be and was poured out on Calvary as the Lamb of Yahuwah, who provided our sin atonement. The Lamed Aleph Tav is confirmed by Yeshua himself in Matthew 28, verse 18, when he stated that all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Friends, I have just confirmed the Apostle Paul's words from the Torah, using the Aleph Tav that he must have seen and recognized as Yeshua's mark in the Torah. And this is just a small taste of what you will see when you begin to read the Messianic Aleph Tav scriptures. I'm Bill Sanford, trying to put the Aleph Tav in proper perspective in our day. Shalom.